What is the collective noun for a group of gay men? A flock? An ensemble? A flamboyance? A factory? A gaggle? A faggle? We gays need each other, so why do some of us act like we can do this on our own?
Once upon a time in a fabulous land, where morals are sparkly and fables are grand, Gaze-Up's tales with a wise man's twist, serving wisdom on a glittery dish.
Hello my Fabies, and welcome back to Gaze-Up's Fables after our bonus episode Buffy Extravaganza Fabuloso Extraordinaire. This is Gaze-Up's Fables, where we tell classic tales with a modern gay twist. I'm Matt, your modern day fabulist. We are here to talk about being gay in this topsy-turvy world through the lens of sexy woodland creatures and contemporary morals for your contemplation. I am not here to lecture, to judge, or to conduct therapy. This is a little food for thought, little share session, and hopefully a lot of fun. This week we're going into the jungle, where we'll be exploring gay friendships through an adapted Aesop fable that I have called The Wolf and the Tiger. Far away from the gay forest and the gay bush was the gay jungle, and in this steamy, wet, humid, damp, moist environment thrived a plethora of gay life. Among this gay life was the most solitary of all gay animals, the tiger. Also running among the jungle was the most pack of all gay animals, the wolf. Do you see where I'm going with this? The tiger didn't trust others. He had his own territory, his own prey. He didn't want to share. He needed to be the best. In fact, his whole identity depended on it. You see, tiger cubs are taught to be self-sufficient very early on. As soon as they are able, they are left on their own to fend for themselves. And when you're on your own, you have to be the best. Your survival depends on it. The tiger learned to be proud about going it alone. Each night, he would go to his favorite fetish bar, the subcontinent. Their motto, no one likes an incontinent sub. He would prowl the dimly lit corridors, looking at the deer and cattle and wild pigs, and decided what he fancied each evening. In his mind, he could choose whomever he wanted. You see, he was in control. And each evening, he would retire to his tiger cave. Den? You would think I would start researching before I started filming, but here we are. He would curl up alone. He would wake up alone. He would be alone. Other tigers would just compete for the same prey or else just get in the way. The wolf lived a very different life. He grew up with his fellow pups and eventually they became a pack. They were territorial, so it's not like the wolf got along with everyone in the jungle, but the wolf knew who his family was. He'd always been reliant on his pack. He could hunt small prey on his own. He wasn't totally useless solo, but for big things, he could only get by with a little help from his friends. But he wasn't always up for group fun. He didn't need to stand out all the time, unlike the tiger, but every now and then it felt good to be on his own and in the spotlight. One day, the wolf was exploring the jungle on his own, listening to the sounds of the trees, and in the far-offing, in the distance, the singing of Louis Armstrong orangutans and the dancing of bears in coconut bikinis. But I digress. The wolf walked into a clearing where he spotted the tiger casually lying out catching some rays. It wasn't feeding time for either of them, so they were both pretty relaxed. The wolf thought he might even stop and have a chat, you know, predator to predator. The tiger heard the wolf approaching, was immediately on edge, though he played it cool. He struggled with social interaction, but he liked the whole jungle to think that he was simply above it, superior. "Where's your pack, wolf?" The That's the tiger. He thought he would get the upper hand and keep the wolf on the back foot by starting with the offensive. The wolf wasn't bothered by the tiger's approach. He had dealt with solitary hunters before. Yeah, I'm the wolf now. Sometimes it's nice to go off on your own, knowing that you have a family to go back to. The tiger laughed at the wolf, his muscles rippling with every sexually charged guffaw. Puny lupine, he thought to himself, an exact blend of inferiority and superiority complexes working together in disharmony. The wolf had struck a nerve. The tiger was preparing a perfectly acidic response when suddenly they heard a bang! A farmer had spotted the animals earlier, and scared for his sheep, his flock, he decided to take matters into his own hands in a preemptive strike. The shot exploded, grazing both animals with shrapnel. Yes, Gaesop's Fables is now an action-adventure! Both animals had leg wounds, and they scarpered either side back into the jungle. The wolf limped all the way back to his pack, where he collapsed in pain and exhaustion. The rest of his pack immediately took care of him, bringing him water and food and care and love, and standing guard to make sure that the human hunters were nowhere to be seen. He closed his eyes, and he was able to rest. He was home, and he was safe. The wolf was able to slowly recover over the next weeks. His pack would bring him water, bring him small bits of prey, and eventually he was able to return to the jungle and to being a functional member of the pack society. The other side of the jungle, the tiger limped back to his den, set, fen, burrow, cave. He was also home, but he did not feel safe. There was no one else to stand guard for him, so he had to do it himself, and he did not rest. He also needed to heal, but he had to fetch his own water, hunt his own animals, which was proving very difficult. Eventually, he just started using his massive size to scare away animals by other carcasses. This was beneath him. He got better slowly, but he was more on edge, more nervous, more alone. Maybe I shouldn't be in competition with absolutely everyone, the tiger thought to himself. I think it's pretty obvious what the moral of this story is. Health scares are a great way to get attention. Thank you. So the real moral this week is a friend in need is a friend indeed. This wolf and tiger fable was adapted from Aesop's original fable, The Lion and the Mouse. In this tale, a lion catches a mouse and toys with him. He's going to kill him, but what's a mouse going to really do to feed a lion? So the lion plays, the mouse begs for his life, saying, "Oh, I'll repay the favor, I'll repay the favor." The lion thinks, what the f*** is a mouse going to do to pay me back? But he's amused. It's really of no consequence whether the mouse lives or dies. He lets him go. Not long after, the mouse is going through the jungle, savannah, the Pride Lands, and he hears the lion struggling, and it turns out the lion's been caught under a rope net by hunters, but despite his brute strength, he is not able to free himself. But guess who can? The mouse comes to his rescue, gnawing through the ropes, and freeing the lion, who has to concede, "I needed your help, little mouse. You have value in my life." Research actually suggests that it is close friendships that are the biggest lifelong predictor of well-being, not romantic relationships and not family. And we gays need each other. We have a rich history of chosen families. Yes, it's the Chosen Families episode. From the trans house mothers of the ballroom scene to lesbian activists supporting gay men with HIV and AIDS in the 80s, when we come together for good and not evil, we do very, very well as a community. We change lives. While it's often assumed that we created these families simply because we were rejected by our own, there's a lot more to it. There's more depth. Chosen families are not just about the rejection from birth families, but more a sense of shared culture, shared values, shared experiences, shared lives. And when we're together, there's a sense of support and resilience to the shifting sands around us. I love my birth family very much, and they know me very, very well. They're very supportive of me and they accept me and my sexual identity wholly, but there's just always a part of me that they can't reach simply because they're not a gay man. Not for lack of trying, to understand me, not to be a gay man. And as I've said in a previous video, where I've not usually / ever been good in romantic relationships, I've always been very, very good at attracting good friends, investing in them, and having a lovely reciprocal, deep, and also really fun type of dynamic. And good for that, because one day, suddenly, I became very reliant on my friends. I learned what it was to be truly at the mercy of others and to be truly vulnerable. In late 2023, I was having what could only be described as the shittiest shit of a time. And it came just as things in my life had been looking up. I'd finally left a bad marriage. I was starting to live a fairly fabulous independent life. Work was going well. I was even dating again, doing that just as appallingly as I've always done, racking up lots of lovely stories that will no doubt be used as fodder in future content. And then one day, it all started falling apart. I had been very busy at work, and then I went away as a little treat to myself in September to Croatia. I got back, and my first meeting in the calendar was with my head of department. I thought, oh, that's interesting. She's probably just trying to catch me up. And then the head of global HR was there, and I was like, fuck. And I learned that I was being made redundant, or my position didn't exist anymore, and I'd been there for 21 months, just 3 months short of the 24-month legal protections you get in the UK for statutory redundancies. So that was one thing, to lose my job, along with a lot of people that day. And what was worse is I was on a skilled sponsored work visa to stay in the UK. I'd been on a spousal visa and I'd switched when I got divorced. And suddenly, I was facing deportation if I couldn't find another job. I was terribly stressed. I played it cool sometimes and woke up in a panic sweat at other times. But through all of that, my friendships stood really true and people didn't want me to leave and I didn't want to leave. I'd spent 7 years building a life here. Going back to Australia wouldn't have been the worst thing, but it certainly wasn't what I wanted. I'd fought so hard to stay here already, and this was the next hurdle for me. And after 6 weeks of searching for sponsored jobs in very uncertain economic times, I was at the gym one day when I suddenly had the worst headache of my life. It felt like someone had hit me with a cricket bat. Before I was vomiting all over the place. I couldn't stand. I was collapsed. I was scooped up by some big straight gym bro saying, "Are you all right, mate?" And I said weakly with my eyes closed, "No." And I was taken to hospital in an ambulance where I was informed that I had not one but 2 brain aneurysms and that one had burst, causing bleeding onto my brain. This is known as a subarachnoid hemorrhage. I wish I could say it was common. It's not, certainly not in people my age, but it was very, very scary. It was life or death, and I was very happy to say that after 9 hours of brain surgery, where I had a double craniotomy, I landed on the side of life. Here are some before surgery and after surgery photos, tongue out for the drama. That didn't go away, although one of my aneurysms was in my frontal cortex, and I was a bit concerned that I may not wake up as I was when I went to sleep. In fact, my very last thought as they were putting me under was, if I die, I'll never even know. But I didn't die, I survived, but I wasn't yet doing well. There were some complications and some further risks of stroke, so I was in ICU for a while being monitored, and in that time I relied on my friends. I obviously had an amazing medical team, lots of great care for the most part, life-saving neurosurgeons, fantastic people at Charing Cross Hospital, and I guess this video is really about all the other kinds of support I was receiving at the time. I had also an amazing and very concerned family, some in America and some in Australia, and they couldn't get over in time for the surgery because it was fairly soon after being admitted. And so my friends really really took on that role and did it beautifully. One of my very close friends, let's call him Carol, agreed to be my next of kin, and this poor guy was lumped with all of the job of communicating to people all around the world whilst I was under, and then whilst I was in my delicious 32-hour coma after my surgery. The best 32 hours of my life being asleep, and probably some of the worst 32 hours for other people who weren't sure how I'd be when I woke up. But I did wake up, and from memory I was still very out of it, and they were changing my catheter, and I remember my friends being at the end of the bed and me going, "You guys can see my penis." And ICU and the ward is quite busy. I mean, there's a lot of procedures. I was having scans all the time and being prodded in all the wrong ways, and washed and fed like clockwork. I wasn't really able to use my phone for a little while because it was a bit painful to use my eyes to look. But I had some visiting hours every evening from 5:30 till 8:30. I was allowed 2 people at a time, and I filled those allotted slots with company because that's what you really need. And they saw my head go from extremely swollen, or as one friend called me, megamind, to roughly back to the shape that it was beforehand. And I had to deal with my own vanity because I didn't know how I was going to end up looking, because it was pretty big wounds with 37 staples down the side of my face. But you know, gay man, you know, take the boy out of the gay. And my friends brought me toothbrush and extension cable chargers and crosswords, not that I could do them yet, and all the bath products you could imagine, even though I wasn't able to use them for 6 weeks because I wasn't able to shower. But then when I got home, I had every molten brown under the sun to keep me clean for 6 months. They even did things like trim my beard, and they didn't have to wash my ass because I had a team of 3 to do that, and I missed them. I do. So between organizing my visitors, eventually I was upgraded to being able to wash part of myself, the front, and still relied on people to wash the back. So my friends saw me in bed every day, at first very swollen and lumpy, and then it all sort of started going back to where it was, albeit with fairly visible scars. And I didn't know it at the time, but some fairly hidden scars, but that is a topic for another day. Everyone would bring in a box of chocolates, which was amazing. I actually was eating a box of chocolates a day, and I still lost 9 kilos while I was there, because apparently refusing your skull bones into your skull where they took them out, it burns a lot of calories. But at one point I had a stack of chocolate boxes next to my bed from all my wonderful visitors, and one person would leave, the next one would come in, and I'd be like, "Cadbury milk tray?" But it wasn't just the gesture, it was also that sense of connection and knowledge. 2 of my best friends, a married couple, knew of my love of custard and these sorts of moussey, cheesecakey, non-cake desserts. I don't like cake, I'm sorry, a Victoria sponge, it does nothing for me. And they brought in a whole stack of Waitrose jellies and Waitrose panna cottas. And being the very concerned citizen I was, and being ravenous after not eating for a couple of days, this is when I was in ICU, I thought it best to take care of the panna cottas as quickly as possible lest they spoil. In ICU you have one-to-one nursing care, so my nurse Anna had left the room not sure what she was doing, I was her only patient. She's great. And she came back and I'd already polished off about 3 panna cottas, and there were the 3 empty containers of the pack of 4 on my little tray table in front of me. And she said to me, really dry Polish wit, she said, "It says here you collapsed at the gym." And I said, "Yeah, that's right." She looked at the empty containers, she looked at me, and she said, "No wonder you go to the gym." Eventually I had to start standing, although I did collapse to the floor a few times, and then changed physios to one who didn't push me quite that hard and did little leg workouts for me while I was in bed. And then I could walk around the bed assisted, and then I could walk around the bed unassisted. I could start making my way to the toilet, which was a devastating turn of events because I had gotten very used to my team of 3. And when they said to me, "You can walk," I said, "Yes, I'm getting better." They said, "You can go to the toilet on your own." And I was like, "Come again?" And I was starting to return to normal life. There were still things wrong, and you could see here we learned that my facial muscles had atrophied during the surgery and they could no longer support my facial nerves, so I had this fabulously baby smooth half face, which saved me a lot of money on Botox for a year, and then suddenly it came back. Devastating. My hair grew back, my scars started to fade, the physical first, and eventually the emotional ones started to fade as well. I meet some gay men sometimes and I hear them have these scathing reviews of the gay scene, and look, I get it, but after what I'd been through, when I saw the sort of strength that I could borrow from people around me, and the self-esteem I could borrow from the people around me, and the confidence I could borrow, and I just had a very different perspective on gay friendships after all of this. I felt truly held by those around me. We gays, we love to chase status, and I can tell you, when you're lying in a loincloth in a hospital gown with a catheter in, unable to stand, unable to move, stripped of your job, stripped of your immigration status, facing deportation, stripped of your health, the thing that you put so much pride into, all you have is the strength of the relationships around you. And that's just fabulous. If you're enjoying this content, please do like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. It means that YouTube will get the message out to other people. You better believe I'll have some sort of title about surviving a brain aneurysm. And please don't judge me. I almost died. Have a moral week, everyone.
Serving wisdom on a glittery dish. Gaze up fables, it's the tea, it's the show. Lessons in love with a fabulous glow. Quick wit, sharp, he'll strut the moral road. Gather round, hun, let the gay story unfold.